thousands. I've had the opportunity to work with thousands of patients in my 23 years as an adult and geriatric physical therapist. Majority of them ranging in age from 65 to 105. And what I can tell you is that the number one mobility problem across the board may surprise you. It's not walking, it's not getting to a toilet, it is sit to stand. Yes, this is the most difficult task I see for most people. And it's a huge problem because standing up from any surface is the gateway to getting from point A to point B. The good news is I am going to teach you the step-by-step technique for sit to stand, the safest way for your aging loved one to approach sitting down, and a bonus toilet trick. It's hard to imagine when we're younger that this is a major issue for most seniors. So why does standing up from sitting become such a challenge as we age? Usually it's not one thing, but a multitude of reasons can contribute, such as decreased strength and range of motion, immobility from illness or injury, sitting most of the day, or a lot of times pain can land people here. I'll describe a very typical scenario with a patient whom we'll call Marvin. Marvin lived in an assisted living facility, and he was used to getting up from like 4 surfaces total: the edge of his bed, his elevated toilet seat, his lift chair, and the dining room chair in the assisted living dining room. Over Christmas break, Marvin's son takes him to his home to celebrate Christmas with his extended family. And Marvin hadn't been there in a while. He goes straight to the bathroom, like most of us have to do when we arrive at a new destination. And guess what? He cannot get up off the standard toilet seat in Marvin's son's home because he was used to getting up from the elevated toilet seat. So he has to summon his family for help, which is embarrassing. He doesn't want to trouble anyone. It's not off to a great start at this point. Then he is assisted by his family to a low height, kind of soft surface chair where he sits for quite a while. You see where this is going? When it's time to stand up again, Marvin cannot get up. Once again, he has to summon the help of his family to help get him up off of that surface. Needless to say, the report I got back from both Marvin and his son after this little outing, adventure we'll say, was that while it was great to get to visit the family, it was rather challenging and maybe a little more than they bargained for. Now, not every seat is created equal. Something I see that most people don't consider is that various surfaces can make a huge difference. High, low, soft, firm, rocking chairs, with and without armrests, wheelchairs, dining room chairs, chairs that sink down when you sit in them. All of these things really play into the ease or difficulty of somebody standing up. What I recommend to my patients and their families and caregivers is to practice getting up from various surfaces in your home or in your environment. Even if it's not your chair or your loved one's, this is my chair, because we all have that. Maybe it's a place you don't normally sit or that they haven't sat in a very long time. But we'll consider this training for your functional mobility and independence. Another huge caution or word of advice that I like to give people is to not let your elderly parent or grandparent sit in the middle of the couch, ever. If the couch is looking like the surface of their choice and they are wanting to walk towards the couch and sit there, that's fine. But make sure they sit on one end of it, either end of the couch, where they do have that armrest and they're not finding themselves smack dab in the middle. It'll sink in. It may be a deep set couch. It may be low height, because when it's time to stand back up, that is going to be a super challenge, probably for both of you. So this brings me to a question that you may be asking. What about those chairs that lift people up? Let me preface this by saying that I have a love-hate relationship with lift chairs, but I'll tell you where I've landed after I explain. As an onlooker, lift chairs seem like the perfect solution. As a physical therapist, I've spent years going back and forth on how I really feel about them. In my opinion, and in my experience, the huge downside is that people raise them up and then they only have this very short distance to stand up, right? Which means that their muscles and their joints quickly get accustomed to only working in that very short range, and they're not going through a full range of motion to have to work to stand up. Then they find it tremendously difficult to get up from anything other than that raised lift chair. And that's the part I hate. The huge upside is the other side of the coin. My older folks have only a short distance to have to get up and down from, and it often allows them independence that they wouldn't otherwise have. That is the part that I love. And at the end of the day, I'm going to choose functional independence, decreasing caregiver burden, and that sense of accomplishment every time. If you are considering one of these lift chairs for your parent or grandparent, my advice would be to have them keep it on the lowest setting, on the lowest height, and use it that way unless or until they absolutely need to start raising it up some. And even at that point, only raise it to the point that they really need to. If they don't need it way up, I would not encourage that. I would keep it at the lowest height possible that they are functionally able to do for as long as possible. Now, I'm finally going to teach you that secret sauce, step-by-step technique for your elderly loved one to stand up easier, the safest way to approach sitting, and you must stay tuned for that bonus toilet trick. In order to help your loved one get up from any surface they may be sitting on, whether that's the edge of their bed, chair, couch, toilet, here is the ideal textbook technique that should help them every time. First, scoot out to the very edge of the surface. Next, have their feet a little bit apart. The next thing is always push from the surface. We don't want them popping wheelies. Everybody wants to pull on their walker. So you want to push from the surface you're on. If they don't have armrests, they can push from the edge. But if they do have armrests, that usually helps to leverage a little bit. And then the last part, which is the key to all of this, is they've got to come out and up. And I tell patients, this is like a plane taking off, right? So you're going to come so far forward. We say nose over toes, out, and up. I hope this helps. Another thing I always stress to my patients, whether they're using this type of a walker or the rollator, the 4-wheel type, is to use that walker all the way up to the surface they're gonna sit on. Because here's what a lot of people wanna just do this, park it, and then walk to the chair. That drives me crazy because there's just too much, we'll call margin of error right here for somebody to get off balance and fall, right? So the way I teach people is to literally, you're gonna stay in that frame of that walker and they're gonna basically just drive right up to the surface. They're gonna start to turn back and they are gonna wanna feel the back of that if it's a chair like this, or just know that the surface is there and get good and squared up. That way they're holding on to that walker the whole way. So they have 4 points of stability the whole way. Then we reach back. If there's armrests, reach for those. If there's just an edge, reach for that. But then they can reach back, go down nice and slowly. We say no plopping, try to go down controlled, and then we can put our walker aside and it's ready for the next time we get up. All right, I'm gonna give you 2 quick tips on getting in the bathroom with narrow door frames, because many houses don't accommodate the full width of a rolling walker. So you can turn it sideways and we're gonna sidestep. So this part of the walker is more narrow, so that should help your loved one do this more efficiently and safely. That way they can still keep this with them to have some stability going to the bathroom. Now, this is my favorite toilet trick. That sounds weird, but oh well. This is in case you don't have an elevated toilet seat, but your loved one really needs one because they're having trouble standing up from the toilet. Watch, we're gonna use this rolling walker so we've sidestepped in, and this is a little bathroom, right? So we're gonna turn the walker, we turn with it, and we're gonna roll it right up over the toilet, turn, sit, and then I can kind of move this and use this as arms. Use the handles as armrests. So when it's time to get up, I have a little leverage. I hope that helps. If you found this episode helpful, I know you're going to enjoy this one. Thank you for joining me today. And if you found healthful connections here, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend or a loved one.